I'm sorry that's so loud. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Victoria. You are at our Welcome to the Design Justice Network session. I think this is our 7th or our 8th session that we've been holding. And so they change every time as new stuff comes out of the network, new information, new working groups, new nodes. But what I do is start by introducing both myself and Taylor. This is Taylor, who you can see on the screen. She's an artist and an organizer, a graphic designer based in from Metro Detroit. And she's my co-staff, and she has the title Special Projects Manager. And then I'm also happy to say that my role is now the Node and Working Group Manager. I will explain what nodes and working groups are shortly, but I'm also based in Toronto, which is the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Mississauga and Huron-Wendat territories. And I'm also a graphic and web designer, so I do that on the side and support the network. So we also always start with, why are we holding these sessions? Part of why we've been running these sessions is we were hosting network-wide sessions for nodes, and nodes are one of our ways to get involved. And we kind of started realizing that we needed more specific spaces for the people in the nodes to connect. And we needed more general, what is the network? How do I get involved in the network sessions? So that was a learning over the last couple of years. Part of this is also to help provide better support to new people, new members, new signatories, help learn some lessons from the questions that people have, and try to create more and better space within the network itself. And so before I dig into the ways to get involved in the network, I will first touch on a little bit briefly, what is design justice, a little bit of that history. And we're only going to record the first half an hour or so while I'm talking, and then we'll go into question and answer, which will not be recorded. So you can ask me all the things you want to know. We have private ways to type them, or type them in the chat. I'll explain that. And so what is design justice? So I'll touch on this really briefly. And it's just a quick overview because we want to make sure everybody has a bit of a grounding in it. What you can see on the screen is the question, what is design justice? And then the book by Sasha Costanza-Chuck, who's one of the steering committee members of the network. The book is Design Justice, Community-Led Practices to Build the Worlds We Need. It's available for free online, or you can order it or buy it at a bookstore. Highly encourage it if you haven't taken a look yet. So design justice, it is a framework for analysis, broadly speaking, of how design, or the design of socio-technical systems, all of the things that we use and do from day to day, how all of that is designed, how that influences the distribution of benefits and burdens between various groups of people. And I'm going to delve into what that means. It is, well, this is exactly what I just said, but we're talking about design in terms of images, interfaces, objects, the built environment, and those distribution of the benefits and the burdens. It's really important when talking about design justice to acknowledge the philosophies, the people, the organizations that have inspired and really kind of built up design justice. All of those are links, so if you want to take a look and read more in the slides, you can click them and learn more about each. But it's really important, and two of them grounding things that we often talk about is that design justice has come out of a lot of these organizations or these thoughts. Black feminist thought, generally speaking, Kimberly Crenshaw, the matrix of domination, another big word that's in the book, which is why the introduction to the book is linked there. You could delve more in depth into what these terms all mean, but the matrix of domination, another really key term that Patricia Hill Collins talks about in that book. And we talk about these and share some of the organizations just because we want to acknowledge that design justice didn't just grow overnight. It's built upon a lot of people's important work over many, many years. And so now I'm going to just briefly tell you what design justice is if you haven't heard about it. And what you can see on the screen is like the black circle in the center with 3 pink dots. And inside that it says design process. And then outside of that circle, you see 8 dots. And so what this image is demonstrating is that design processes tend to center those who are already the most powerful. So the most powerful are those pink dots. And then the others are always on the periphery of that process. And so if we took an example of, Samsung, the company Samsung, and the people who have the most power, that's going to be your CEO, the top financial people in the center there, and then everybody else. And everybody else would be all the people working in the company. It would be all the people in the world that use or cannot use Samsung, all the people who build the pieces that go into the phones or the cameras and all the things that we use. And so when we're talking about design justice, we're asking some of the questions, and those questions are: who was involved in the process, who was harmed, and who benefited in that process. And so fundamentally, we're talking about that distribution of the benefits and the harms, distributive justice, but as well, procedural justice. So the process of the design that you're making. So when we're talking about Samsung again, the process of who was involved in making it, who actually got to benefit from it, who was harmed in that process. And so in a conventional design process, which is what you can see on the screen now, the benefits tend to go to those who are more powerful in society, and the harms tend to go, or less benefits tend to go to those people who have less power. So in terms of equity, that process is inequitable. But we have, in the example I use, the CEO who will be getting all of those benefits, and the people who, for example, are working in the mines to create the batteries that are going to go into our machines. They have very little power and probably very little benefits from doing the work that they're doing. And then the same thing applies to the harms. So more harms goes to those who have less power, whereas less harms go to those who have more power. And I'm sure you're seeing the connections. So then when we're talking about design justice, we're talking about a design process that centers those who are normally left out, who are normally marginalized from that process, so that it expands the knowledge and the lived experience of the community, that those are the things that are centered in any sort of process. So if we were using that Samsung example, we would have the people who are working in the mines, working alongside or in tandem with or having the same amount of power as everybody else in that process. And design justice more broadly, and the network, it's a growing space, a growing practice, and it focuses on these equitable distribution of those benefits and burdens. It encourages meaningful participation in any design decisions and a recognition of the community-based Indigenous and diasporic design traditions and knowledge and practices. So when you look at and read the 10 design justice principles, I'm going to go into their history now. You'll notice that is important within what we're talking about. The Design Justice Network also has a mission and a vision and intentions. These are new. We launched them at the very end of last year, so 2021. Because yes, it's 2022 now. And so we developed these, and it's really exciting that we have them. Lots of people asked us, do you have a mission? Do you have a vision? For a very long time. And those things take a little bit of work to build. But I'm not going to read them all out loud. I'm going to read the mission just for right now. But for the Design Justice, the mission is we build our collective power and experiences to bring forth worlds that are safer, more just, more accessible, and more sustainable. We uplift liberatory practices, experiences, practices, and tools, and critically question the role of design and designers. And rooted in a sense of abundance, possibility, and joy, we provide connection, care, and community for design justice practitioners, which hopefully all of you are or are interested in becoming. I won't read these because it will take a bit long, but they're there in case you want to take a look. There's also a video to see how that mission and vision was actually launched. And important history is that a lot of the members of the network helped create it, helped develop it, helped edit it. So it was a big process, which was really exciting. And so now I'm just going to do a little bit of background history about the network. I won't go too in depth, just to make sure everybody knows a little bit about the network. So what you can see here is a picture of the Allied Media Conference. It's a conference that takes place annually or biannually now in Detroit. And this is where Design Justice was born. This image is from 2015, where there was about 30 people in that room that you can see on the screen. They were technologists, they were community organizers, they were designers, they were artists from lots of different backgrounds. And what is happening in that picture is they're taking place in a workshop called Generating Shared Principles for Design Justice. And the goal for that workshop was to basically move through or beyond the frames of social impact design or design for good. So while those have great intentions, they aren't necessarily enough to ensure that the design process and the practices are becoming tools for liberation or are justice focused. And so part of that workshop was to develop principles that might help practitioners avoid that, often unwitting reproduction of the inequalities around social impact or design for good. So it was questioning that, using that tree, what is it called? The 3 circles diagram that we looked at. And there are a lot of organizations and individuals that are doing and using design justice in different ways. And so the principles were first formed at that session in very rough format. And then over the coming years, they were edited and re-edited and hashed out by lots of different people. This is an image of just that first workshop where you can see design justice is, and we do this by, and that was some of the prompts that were used. And then the following year at the Allied Media Conference, again, we had what was called a network gathering. So it was an all-day sit in a room and talk about design justice. And here was where some of that editing and re-editing and shaping worked, and people just worked and talked to each other. It was really great. This is actually a picture of Taylor on the left, who is working with another one of our members, editing, thinking, wording around those words. And then this final image is in 2018, again, back at the Allied Media Conference. We have a good base there. This is the year that the 10 design justice principles, as you see them now, were officially launched. There's a picture in the background. It's a picture of a cover of the zine, and that zine is available on our website. Oh, here's a picture of some of the zines. There's actually 2 that are not pictured here. One that just launched, which was by one of our working groups. So I'll go into that shortly. But the newest zine is called the Principles at Work zine. So a big question that people ask us all the time is, okay, these principles are great, but how do I put them into action? And I'm sure some of you will ask me that today, but we have a zine that actually now speaks to some of that, people's feedback over the years. So it's very cool and all built and done by our members. And so just very briefly to touch on how the network works and the structure, you can see sort of this circle again with a white dotted line on the outside. Outside of the dotted line, it says signatories, and on the inside, it says members. That's to signify that there's lots of people in this network, and people just have different roles or different things that they've taken on. So signatories, they're on the outside of that circle just to signify that they've signed on, they want to use these principles. They're probably using them day to day, but they're not part of the membership of the network. And what members do is join. They pay a fee or they do some in-kind work, and they have access to our wider Slack channel where they can connect with people in the network all over the world. And then the inner circles are some other types of roles that people can take on. So people can become a local node, either facilitator or just member, part of a working group, or part of the steering committee. The steering committee currently is 7 people, and they've been people who've been around or involved in the network for a really long time. But if anyone's interested, that all of those options to be involved are available to everybody. To quickly explain signatory and member, as I mentioned, everybody signs on to the principles. That's somebody known as a signatory. And then you can take the next step if you wish to become a member. And as I mentioned, that would be an in-kind or a paid membership where you'd have access to the Design Justice Network Slack channel, where you can network with all the different people all over the world, the different nodes, the people doing work all over. Invitations to our member story share sessions. So maybe some of you have seen in our newsletters where we share members' work and stories. And then we do invites to members to join a talk where that member or members would share about their work. We also have had care circles. That's been a big membership benefit that people have been able to participate in, and lots of other things. And we always really love feedback or ideas on what more benefits could be for our members. So that's a little bit of history about that. In terms of some people often ask us, like, who are the other groups that you're working with, or these other groups also use the words design justice. And yep, there's a lot of groups that use design justice, and they're all very much aligned with us. We don't always work with each other all the time, but we're doing amazing, great work all over the place. And this is just a few of set groups: Algorithmic Justice League, Black Women Flourish, Design as Protest. So a lot of those organizations are doing really amazing work. And it's always important to acknowledge that we have a lot of similarities, but we also have different focuses, and that's totally great and perfect. And we need lots of space for everybody doing this type of work. And lots of people want to know about our finances. So this is quickly, we have 4 main sources of how we would get any income. That would be through membership fees. That would be through the sales of merch and publications. So we've got zines or t-shirts or different things like that that you can buy, or you can sell, or you can create, and then we can sell them. So lots of opportunities. We also get asked to do workshops and talks at different organizations, or for example, next week or in the coming weeks, I'll be going to the Science Center in Toronto and just doing facilitation training. So we get opportunities like that where people are just really interested to have more. And then lots of people just give one-time donations. They read the principles, or they read the book and they really like it, and they say, hey, we just want to give you some money. But there's more information there, and especially for our members, if there are members here, you can access some of those finances. We don't have a fully fleshed out process, but we have something. So if you are a member looking into wanting to do some work, just take a look at that page. Another question people ask a lot is who are the members in the network? We actually learn a lot about who our members are when we have sessions like we're doing right now. One difficulty has just been that we don't have yet a membership system that will cater to how big the network now is. But we learn a lot about our members from just sessions like this. And paid membership, that's another good question. Why for paid membership? And with opening paid membership, it's really helped grow the capacity of the network. So the goal is not to accumulate tons of paid members and tons of money that doesn't go anywhere. The goal is more to support and encourage facilitation, support the work that's being done by our members, and also to manage it safely. Safely, for example, in the Slack space that members have access to, but not the entire world, to help build capacity to create spaces like that for our members. And yeah, that's the main information. But the network itself has really been an internet facilitated space. So it's really cool when we actually get to meet each other sometimes. And obviously with the pandemic, we've all been pretty used to that. But even from the get-go, we were very internet based because we were so international and all over the place, which is what's pretty cool about our network. And now I just want to tell you a little bit of design justice in action. So I've talked about local nodes and working groups, our members. So now I'm just going to show you a few examples of that to see what opportunities might lie out there if you're interested. So our member stories, this is what I said was one of the member benefits. So you can be a member story or you can attend a member story when someone is giving one. But our member stories are just like highlighting the work of people within the network, our members. So the two people you can see on screen, Layla and Leslie Ann Noel, have done some really cool work. We have actually their member story sessions recorded on YouTube, so you can go and check them out later if you want. But to use Layla as an example, Layla it's too small for me to see, so I have to look. She's a woodworker and a luthier. And she builds guitars using environmentally sustainable practices. She works with the community that she lives in to source that wood to build those guitars. And her other focus is around making guitars that actually fit to the body type of the person who she's building it for. And what she did talk about in her story was how guitars are often, built for one particular body type, the straight white male, this frame. And so her focus has been, I'm going to build these guitars to fit the people that actually want them. And of course, part of that is it's a longer process, but it's sustainable. It's the process that works and gives the result for the person that needs it. And she uses those principles in her work, which is really, really cool. And there's lots of more stories. So I totally encourage you to check out some of the other member stories if you get around to it. We also have them both on the website, like in a text format. And then we also have the video of when the member does the story. So if either of those fit what you would like to do or read. So another part of the network is Design Justice in Action, our working groups. Right now we have two that are very, very active, and we've also had a communications working group, which has come in and out. Communications work can be quite overwhelming and a lot sometimes. So right now we have the Principles at Work zine, and they have been leading or creating space for working groups in the network. And they've created many subgroups. One of their subgroups was the zine, which they just put out. And the zine, I believe I linked it, one of these to the zines page, but it's designjustice.org/zines. And you can go and take a look at some of that work that they've been doing, but they are basically trying to put the principles into action in the workplace. So in your, at the university or at the grocery store or wherever it is that you work, how do I put these principles into practice when I notice they're not happening? And so they've been doing some really cool work, really cool trainings for people. And then our newest working group is called the Instructional Designers Working Group. And that's critical instructional designers working around co-teaching or co-designing and teaching, focused around the design justice principles. And right now, I think they're doing kind of a reading group with the design justice book. So always any events that you might be interested in, they're on the website, and pretty much all of them are open for anybody to join based on your time zone, if it works for you. We also have our local nodes. So local nodes are small clusters of people in different sort of geographical areas. So for example, there's one in Toronto, which is where I'm based, and lots of Toronto people participate. There's one in Los Angeles, there's one in the Mediterranean, which is a much larger region, sorry. But there are lots of local nodes in different areas, parts of the world. Singapore, for example, and people just connect with each other. And what's good about it is that you have like the local context, you can focus on the local context, whether it be like, let's tackle this, I don't know, Google project that they're trying to build in my city, or let's just talk about the principles and understand them together and get to know each other and figure out how we can change the way we design things, both in our community and our own work. So there's a lot of ways just to participate, or just hop on to one of those calls if there's not one near you. And there's opportunity to create your own in your neighborhood, hopefully with support of other people. And I'd be happy to answer lots of questions about that after, for sure. And then we also have tons of different ways that people can volunteer within the network. Predominantly, those have existed with translating the principles into different languages. Right now, we'd really love to translate the principles into sign language, American Sign Language or sign language format. So if anyone has ideas on that, that's one thing we're definitely looking for. But any language that's non-English, we have had lots of amazing people over the years translate for us. We've also had lots of people volunteer by just writing something. So they attend a session like we're having right now, and they decide, I would like to write an article or a piece about it. So things like that, or people have helped us create social content or different designs. So if there's something that speaks to you that we haven't mentioned and you are really keen on, please ask later or get in touch for sure. And then also when talking about a network, I promise I'm almost done. When talking about the network, it's good to talk about both the impacts and the areas for growth. And that's something people often ask, like, what have you done, or how have you done it? What has changed? And a lot of that comes from education and re-education. So trying to change the typical design education that happens to focus on the justice and the principles. And then other things are lots of local workshops, our local nodes expansion across the world, creation of all the new working groups, different projects and organizational sign-ons to the principles. That's kind of cool when an organization itself signs on. And then lots of different content creation around the principles. On our Instagram this morning, we just shared somebody had done like some screen printing of the principles last night. So if you've got things like that you've already done, we'd love to share them and highlight them for the people in the network. And then just the growth of the membership and how large, how international it has now become. If you asked us in 2014 or 2015, like, would your network be this big? I don't think I would have said, yes, it's going to grow this big. So it's been really cool to see it in that context. But speaking to impacts, there's also tons of room for growth. One of those things I mentioned was the membership system. We really need and want a membership system so that members can connect with each other a lot better. We're also mostly volunteer run. As in the steering committee, for the longest time, everybody has been volunteers. We do now have staff, as I mentioned, myself and Taylor, which has helped expand the network a lot. Part of the difficulty is also the geographical distribution of us being all over the place and all over the world. So time zones are a real thing, but it's also really great that we get to work within an international setting. And just the changes, the network is still so new. So structures, decision-making process, things like that have just been being built over the years. So we haven't always had a structure. We haven't always had spaces for people to meet and converse, but those things are evolving and growing and being built over the year. Sorry, my dog is biting something on the ground over here. And then finally, the mission and vision that was something that we desperately needed for a long time. And we finally had that launched last year. I put the link at the bottom of this slide here if you want to access it or read the whole thing later. But it's also in the slides at the beginning. But it took, that was one of our evolving and room for growth. And it was great to finally have something like that. And so the final step is a reminder that you can become a signatory or become a member. Those are the links. And now we're going to move into the question and answer period. So I will paste this into the chat. What this link is, it's called a Rise Up, like it's kind of like a wiki pad. It's a text thing where you can see. I'm going to stop the share now. Actually, first I'll stop recording. Nope. I'm not on with my text stuff today. Sorry, everybody.